Okay, hi, welcome. I'm here with Joshua, my new friend from Something Different, a new part of the Bali Spirit Festival this year, and part of a wider context of our theme come together. So Joshua and I only met the other night, right? It was
That's
quite
right.
funny because we had met in a WhatsApp group
Yeah,
to
that's
begin
right.
with, and I meet a lot of people in WhatsApp.
That seems to be the thing here. Yeah.
And then you get to meet the person in the flesh, and I have to say it was super awesome connecting with you the other night, and I got to witness your creation
Mm.
before that, so I was really filled with awe for what you guys
Thank
have
you.
put
Yeah.
together. Obviously our audience has no idea about any of that,
Right.
and it would be super cool to jump into a little bit of the background story of how that came together.
Yeah.
And obviously the theme this year is come together, and I think that's something that we've been working really hard in all areas to embody.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to hear some more about the process and the journey and how this amazing thing came together.
Cool. Yeah. So I came to Bali about 2 years ago. Just kind of exploring. I think like most people do. I was working more on myself and kind of created this container of like meditation, yoga. Wasn't really focused on music, but music has been my background. So I used to work for a radio station back in LA, like
Okay.
maybe 15 years ago. Um, but DJing has been kind of like something that I did on the side in the past maybe 6 years, not really my main thing. So I came out here, I was connecting with people, and then Kamau, a good friend of mine. Are you familiar with Kamau?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been here like 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Part of the woodwork.
yeah, he's a legend for sure.
An incredible performer.
Yeah, he's amazing. And not only a performer, but he provides a platform for other artists.
Yeah.
And
He's
he
very, very inclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So he was kind of like my inspiration. He was like, yo, I got this event called Also Everything. I would love for you to DJ. And I was like, I didn't come here to be a DJ. It's not really my thing, but it comes easy to me. So I'm open to it. So I did that. And then I started getting booked for so many different gigs. Um, and then I was like, you know what, maybe I should stay in Bali a little bit longer. And I started to kind of expand and grow, go into different spaces. And once I decided to actually live here, my intention was to create spaces that I wish existed when I like first came to Bali.
Right.
So like the heart of my music is like soul, funk, R&B, and there aren't very many places that I could experience that in Bali. So I was like, let's create it. I got some friends together, we created a dope event, and from there we've been kind of expanding and building.
And that's getting really well received.
Right? Yeah, it's like one of the most popular Tuesday nights in Bali, like in Ubud. So the place is the Blue Door every Tuesday, and it's packed out from like 7 p.m. to 2:30.
Okay.
And from that, I just got inspired to create more spaces, because we all come from different places, and it's our uniqueness that makes us special. It's what makes us unique. But I think trying to tap too much into what's already happening, sometimes it's dope to create community, but at the same time, it's important to remember where you came from, to make sure that your identity is represented in the space that you're in. So you're not just participating, but you're actually contributing to the expansion of something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think the festival space is probably one of the best places for that kind of thing to happen.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with someone last year, and we were talking about how there's this moment where you can play in a space, you can try all sorts of different things, and you can see what sticks and what works.
Yeah.
And what new stuff you want to identify with, and what new stuff you want to come out of that experience with, and maybe some things that you want to let go of.
Yeah.
So it was. I caught the tail end of the event, which was DJ and you, and we have a beautiful space here called the Tea Temple. And if you can imagine winding down a pathway at nighttime and coming into this opening and seeing just a sea of people jumping, dancing, and smiling, and this amazing beat, this African sound. I mean, this kind of warm, glowing sound that you get with that kind of music. And I was like, oh wow, we've been waiting, wanting, needing, feeling for this to happen. So, but there was like more than just that, right? There was earlier stuff that happened.
It was a showcase.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously I'm a Black American, right? So my thing was going into different spaces, and I didn't see very many people that shared a similar identity. And when you're exposing yourself to new things, it helps to have someone that comes from a similar background to make you feel a bit more comfortable, you know? And I mean, it's something that I also experienced back in LA. I would go to like meditation classes, yoga classes, workshops, and I just wouldn't see very many people of color. So it took a while. It took a while for me to be comfortable in a space and realize that a lot of it is just my own insecurities. Because I honestly don't feel like I've ever not been accepted in a space. Right. Usually when I really sit with it, it's just my own insecurity that's creating the discomfort. So it took a while to be comfortable enough to start showing up in more spaces confidently. And when I came to Bali and I saw kind of like a similar trend, I was like, well, maybe we should have more people of color in these spaces so that other people will feel a bit more safe. Not to make it inclusive, I mean, not to make it exclusive, but to make sure it's more inclusive. So I had a conversation with Meg, who was one of the owners of Yoga Barn.
Yeah, and the founder of the Bali Spirit Festival.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. And she came to the Something Different event on Tuesday, and she's like, I love what you're doing, like continue to do it. And she was just very supportive. Yeah, of the process. Yeah. And she was like, if you need any resources, please let me know. And like, you know, whatever I have is yours in terms of resources. Yeah. Which was amazing, right? Because it takes like allies, it takes people that are in certain positions to be able to help other people and say like, hey, like here's this opportunity or here's this space. Like, do you have any ideas? Right? Yeah,
and I think it's the fundamental energy behind what Megan has created and what the people who are involved in this organization and festival are driven towards, which is to try and do exactly that, create spaces that people feel comfortable in.
Exactly.
Not necessarily specifically about racial background or religion or sexuality, but places that people can feel comfortable. And I think
exactly,
this festival, more than many that I've been to, really achieves that safe space where people can explore.
It is very diverse.
Yeah,
it's
and getting more so. Which is like if you want to see something going in a certain direction, that's the direction you want it to be going in. I think.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's more of like a melting pot, right? Like coming from different places. I think at the end of the day, if you decided to make Bali your home, chances are it's because you're trying to level up at some capacity, whether it's like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, working on your business. I don't meet very many people here in Bali that are just like okay with where they are. You know, I'm not talking about like accepting, like a lot of people accept where they are, but they're also still trying to progress to something else. So that, to me, that's inspiring to be around other people that are like working on in a very specific intention.
And just to jump out of the festival for a minute, why do you think that is?
I think it's because of the space that the Balinese have created, to be honest. Like I've kind of sat with that for a bit since I've been here, and you know, you see workshops and teachers and all this stuff, and I feel like that's not really what makes Bali Bali. What makes Bali Bali are the Balinese, like this sacred space that they've created, and you come here and you feel it, right? And you feel almost just changed by that frequency. And in the beginning, I was like, oh, I'm a different person now. Until I went back to LA and I was doing this same stuff, you know, same patterns. I wasn't really. So first time I came to Bali, to backtrack, was maybe like 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I was
quite different then.
Yeah, very different. But I was deep into like the spiritual spaces and growing. And after some time, you start to feel like you're just a different person, but really your perspectives are different, right? So I think the challenge is when you go to a space that's familiar and you kind of recognize your same patterns. Even though you think that you're a different person, you're still operating in the exact same way. Right. So like you're influenced by the space that you're in. Really. Yeah. So once you get to a point to where you're no longer influenced by your space and you're influenced by your internal mechanics, I feel like then you're actually growing or expanding.
So did you find you were here and you kind of charged yourself up and you were like, right, I'm going back?
Exactly.
gonna jump back into LA, I guess, and now everything's gonna be it's gonna be like this, and it was, or you found
it absolutely was not. No, you because again, it's feeling the inspiration, and it's very easy to get caught up in like practices and like different modalities, and forgetting like the main reason why we do these things is to change our habits, is to like kind of change our patterns and like what we focus on, right? So if you are continually doing things, but you're not paying attention to who you're becoming in the process, I feel like it doesn't really resonate enough for you to make true change.
So I'm intrigued to go a little bit deeper into this to understand how you how coming back to Bali again, and then how you taking that to make that change permanent. Because for me, I mean, I'll just share a little bit for me, but I find I was like exactly like that in the beginning too, and now when I leave, I kind of take the whole thing with me.
Exactly.
And if I'm finding like, I think in Bali there's this interesting thing about duality and black and white, and balancing things all the time. And I'll find myself in a conflict position, maybe with an official or someone, and I'm like, why is this like thing? And then it's like, okay, to like come back to the nice, come back to the calm, get everything back in balance, and then it all works again. What's your experience of that?
So very, very similar. Very similar. Like you kind of have to observe yourself in what you're doing. Like usually when we're in a situation, we're like blaming other people for whatever frustration we're feeling, but at the end of the day, we can only control ourselves. Right?
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's what I experienced when I went back to LA. Was like I was thinking that I was just this different person because I was doing different things out here, but it wasn't like fully who I became yet, if that makes sense. I think it was just kind of like a seed was planted. And then like as I went on with regular life for a few years, that was like in the back of my mind or the back of my heart, whatever you want to call it. And once I started meditating more and getting into more different modalities, I started to realize like this feeling that I'm growing closer to, I felt the deepest when I was in Bali. And I didn't really understand what it was at the time. I just knew that I felt at peace, I felt love, I felt like I was at home. I felt more at home at a place that was so far away from home. And once I actually had the space and opportunity, I decided to spend more time in Bali, and I started to realize exactly what it was.
So this festival, this is the first time you've ever been to Bali Spirit, right?
It is, yeah.
So for me, this is now number 10.
Yeah, a decade.
A decade, so for me, it's really interesting to see the cycle of my time in Bali, and to I always like to think of time in terms of orbits. I really enjoy the idea of like you get to a point that you really remember, and for me, the festival is quite a key point of the year, and then I can go, okay, coming out and coming back in again, I can get like a whole picture of what's going on, where I'm at. I'm super intrigued to talk to anyone this is their first time, you know, like the first experience of this festival, and I'd love to get some insight into what you witnessed, experienced, and maybe what the upgrade feels like.
Yeah, it felt extremely welcoming, you know, because you don't really know what to expect. It's like a festival in a different country, and you have people from all different parts of the world. But at the end of the day, everyone's coming to just connect. Everyone's coming to like just authentically be in a space and experience. You don't feel judgment. You feel well, from my experience, I felt pretty well received by everyone. And I honestly was a bit nervous creating a segment that was so different from everything else. You know, because the vibe is different. Bringing like R&B music, funk music, soul music to a spiritual festival. I wasn't. Megan had a vision, right? She obviously knew what she was doing. And I was
she said, "Hey, we're doing this," and I looked at that. I was like, "Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, for sure."
Man, at first I was like, "You sure?" Because I'm looking at footage from the past few years. I don't see anything that's similar to what you're asking me to bring to the space. And she's like, "Trust me, like it's right." And then once the segment started, it was just everyone was connected to the music, and then you realize it's not really about the genre, right? Like I can listen to Marvin Gaye and I can feel connected, and I could feel like I'm at a higher place just because of that a specific song. And I think we all have different songs that we listen to that make us feel that way.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to think that we have to listen to a specific genre or it has to be a certain frequency in order for us to be able to go to that place. But I mean, yeah, funk music, soul music, like that's what fills my heart, and being able to share that with other people. I was impressed with how many people were also connected with that. And then afterwards saying like, I've been waiting to hear something like this at the festival and your segment was amazing. And at that moment, I realized that like Megan's vision came full circle, and she knew exactly what was kind of missing in the space, and it's representation from all parts of the world, all different genres. As long as it comes from a place of love, like it's accepted here, and that's, to me, that's what's really dope.
Yeah, but I think it's so important to hear that, because I don't like to define myself, obviously, but as a white person, I don't have the perception of that. I haven't had to come from that. I'm grateful, blessed to be in that position, but it's like and I think it's true for a lot of people, right? It's very hard to actually understand this, get it into your head, and I think I'm not quite sure how to articulate it, but I think there's something in this service that you're talking about doing that could be applied to many things. That where people can just show up and say, okay, like something's missing here, but I'm not just going to sit there and go, oh, it's missing. Well, it's not happening. I think you're actually getting in there and you're going like, we just have to move that barrier aside, move that one aside, and now everyone can come in and everyone can be in the same room.
Exactly that.
I think that's a truly beautiful contribution and offering within the space that we're all existing in right now.
Absolutely, yeah, and I truly appreciate the opportunity for that. And like I said, when I decided that Bali was going to be my home, I started to invest in the spaces that I just wanted to exist in. And it is interesting, like being like a Black man from America and the things that we experience that like most Americans don't have to experience. Like I was maybe 16 years old when I had a gun drawn on me by a police officer, right? So when you're and that's like a normal thing for a young Black man to experience in Los Angeles. It sounds crazy, but it's like, yeah, that should happen to me. And it changes your perspective, and the people that are supposed to protect you, you're afraid of. So, you know, normally when you walk next to a police officer, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm safer.
Yeah.
Now that like there's
I think
protection.
This is very hard for people to understand.
Yeah, and that's why I'm actually trying to express it, because like when you don't feel safe in your own home, when you don't feel safe by even when you're close to the people that are supposed to be protecting you, you feel like they're protecting everyone else but you.
Yeah.
Right? So there's this thing that happens to you when you're younger, and it's a perspective that you have as you kind of start to mature and go through life. So when you go into spaces feeling unsafe, feeling unwanted, you have to kind of step back and realize, like, is this just me?
Yeah.
Is this my own past experiences that's creating this insecurity?
Yeah.
Right. And so coming to Bali, kind of trying to acclimate into different spaces, unique spaces, I kept that in mind. And I realized that that's one of the reasons why there's not a lot of Black people in these spaces, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that I did was I started a Black men's group here.
Okay.
I started it maybe 6 months ago now. Because I went to a few different men's groups, and, you know, we would talk about traumas and different experiences. And I feel like my own experience as a Black man in America is like a layer that was preventing me from being able to go to other layers.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I started talking to a few other Black men here in Bali, and I was like, yo, if I was to create this space weekly, like, would you show up? And every person that I talked to was open to it. The next thing you know, it was like, we have about like 12 to 15 men that show up regularly, sometimes more, sometimes less. But to just have Black men come together and talk about their feelings, it's not really a thing.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to go there, right? Like, okay, this is big now.
It's not normal, right? We're told to like just be a man, and you kind of suck it up and you just power through things instead of feeling through things. And that creates this hardness that doesn't allow you to fully feel, to fully experience. And I think that's also something that has allowed prevented Black people from experiencing more, because there's this shell that we're not fully comfortable coming out of, because we're all feeling unsafe, right? If you feel unsafe in your own home where you come from, when you travel outside of that, you're gonna feel even less safe. So I think having a space where you can talk and really share it, you feel empowered. Because it's having other people that have had similar experiences, but this is how I overcame it, right? And we all overcome things in our own unique way, but some things in our story can align with another person's story. And once you start sharing, you start to realize, like, well, we have more in common than we have that's different. And that's kind of connecting with the men and having that space made me realize how important it is to have these spaces. But it's challenging, because the moment I try to create something that anchoring in the Black experience, sometimes there's a little bit of opposition, and it's like, well, why does it have to be Black? Like, why do we have to keep it to one race? Like, we're all one love, we're all one, especially in Bali and in Ubud. I hear that often. It's like, no, there's no color, there's no this, there's no that. It's like, well, it's easy for you to say, like you didn't share my experience, so you don't understand what I had to go through and what trauma I've experienced. And if you don't know my trauma, how can you help me process it? Right. That's the way that I look at least. And once I started creating this men's group and connecting with other people, it's become powerful.
I think it's you touch on something that I think is really, really important for people who aren't of color to express it that way, which is to when you don't have an understanding of all of this, your go-to is to go, well, why do we need to be separate? Why do we need to focus on it? And I think that's what you're mentioning there is really, really important, that we have to, all of us have to give space for everyone else who has whatever they have that they're going through. And we can't just go like, okay, let's sweep that under the table. There's no black or white. Let's just move on from that. You hear that a lot. Like, let's not go there. Let's just all learn to live. But it's like, what I particularly like about what you've been talking about throughout the interview is that by making a space to address something that's inside of you, that you can create some kind of healing around that for primarily yourself.
Exactly.
And then for those who choose to come and inhabit that space with you.
Exactly that.
And that is actually potentially going to really create a change of some sort. Because of course we all want to go in the same direction, where we're all going to stand in the Garden of Eden together and, hold hands, and it's going to be like this amazing epiphany where we're all equal again. But we're not coming from that. We have to recognize that past, right? And present. It's an ongoing thing. I said we have a beautiful World Peace Garden happening at the event this year, and I said to the organizers of that, I said, like, it's a beautiful thing to focus on peace, as if it's like something that's we can look back on and go like, yeah, like that's cool. We're finding peace. But these things are something we have to work on all the time, in my opinion. It's like a daily process. You wake up in the morning, you look yourself in the mirror. Okay, how do I want to be? How do I want to approach the world? What do I want to give today? And that thread that I felt through this, of like that you're someone that's really, you've identified something in yourself from the process that you've been on, and now you're activating that and putting it into motion, and it's physically having an effect and a change on the people around you. And I just take a moment to just celebrate that, man. That's really amazing.
I appreciate it. And it is interesting seeing like the people that come to these spaces that were traveling through Bali and have decided to actually move to Bali, because they're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that there was this community here that existed. And I think that we all can feel more connected to our community and culture in different ways. I mean, it's I don't want to like get too deep into it, but I think with a lot of cultures, like you can go back to like your language, right? You could connect to that. You can go back to your spiritual practices or your beliefs of whatever your ancestors practice. You can go back to your food. Like there's just different things that connect community. But when it comes to like the Black experience, it's like we don't even know what we were outside of slavery. It's like, oh, what religion were you before slavery happened? Before you were given that religion? Like what food did you eat? We're so as like having blood that comes from Africa, but being so disconnected from the place that you came from, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like not even knowing what part of Africa you're from, what language they speak, what food they have, what music they have. So that in itself takes a toll on the community, because it's like, well, how are we going to come together? And when you come together for a reason that's connected to your ancestors, that shit is powerful. But when you're not connected to your ancestors, it's confusing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be honest, it was by design, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's also something that is hard for people to get their head around.
Yeah.
I think is understanding. I spent a lot of time in South Africa, and I asked a guy that I knew. I said, "What? I don't understand the apartheid." In the moment that I was in there, there was no more apartheid in South Africa. Obviously, there was economic apartheid. And he said, "I want to show you something. Come with me." And we got in his car and we drove to this road. We were in what would have been one of the old suburbs. And we came to this road and it was a 6-lane highway. Cars. And we waited for the traffic light and we crossed the road and we came into the first township. And he said, "This is apartheid. They put a road that you cannot cross. You physically cannot walk across it. You don't have a car, so you can't get across to the other side." And I was like, wow, by design.
Yeah.
These things are by design, and I think that's hard for people to address unless they choose to look into history, unless they choose to travel, unless they choose to have experience, that ask questions, put themselves in places that they wouldn't normally find themselves in, to open their heart, broaden their mind.
And the awareness. And it's hard to look at the past or the history when your history books are created by the same people that created the system.
Yeah.
Because of course they're going to rewrite the narrative in a way that makes it confusing to go back to the origin of how this all started, or how it was connected.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like there's communities, there's ethnic groups that feel a certain type of way, and the whole world's like, well, what? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they literally don't know.
Yeah.
So you have to also acknowledge that. So when it's like the whole like Black Lives Matter and like different movements have happened and like other people aren't fully understanding. In the beginning, I was getting frustrated, but you start to realize it's just out of like people not knowing.
Yeah.
But how could they know unless they connect with someone that has certain experiences?
Yeah, right? and they're also in the same framework that's trying to deprive them of the potential to experience something different.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, there's a deep conversation there, right?
I was saying I didn't want to get too deep into that.
Yeah, but I think it is important to touch on it, and I think it's important because there are people out there and they're questioning these things, and more that people are questioning these things, and they're trying to find a way to connect and get in, and maybe not fully comprehend the experience, but at least come to a place where there's some awareness around it that's not this kind of generic broken thing that we're touching on here.
Yeah, and so and tying back to like the festival and something different, is my intention was to just try to create spaces that are rooted in my roots, what I experienced, so that people that have experienced similar experiences will feel comfortable and welcome in those spaces. But at the same time, the space is open to everyone that feels inspired. So it's like, just because this comes from where I come from doesn't mean that you can't be inspired by it just because you come from somewhere else. Yeah. And I think that is powerful. It's important for people to create authentically. Yeah. Right. Because if you create authentically, people that have share similar identity will absolutely resonate. Yeah. And then of course, everyone else, just because it's coming from that right place, they're going to be as open to it as well. Yeah, and as someone that experienced it directly, and I hope that people listening to this get the opportunity to, at some point in time, experience it too, and maybe experience some of the additional media that we have around it. Mm-hmm. But as someone that experienced it, I want to say that you nailed it. You nailed that like openness. Like it makes me feel emotional, but it's like you really got it open. You like got it so that everybody could go and enjoy, and everyone could go and feel that thing. And I think that's a special power, man. Thank you, brother. Yeah, special power. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been beautiful to have this platform and have other people from the community to be able to come and share. There's like lyricists, spoken word, R&B, soul. These artists that would never have an opportunity to really perform at a festival. Yeah, that's based. It's like based on spirituality and mindfulness. Yeah. Right? For them to bring their own vibe to that space and it be accepted, it's like, it's life-changing.
And for you to be the one opening that door. I mean, we haven't talked about all of the amazing artists that were there because we just got into it, but really like really amazing how many people you were able to draw into that space as well.
I was surprised by how many people were so open to coming and performing and showing up, like because at the end of the day, the people that showed up, like they're performing from the heart. It's not something that they're trying to be, it's just an expression of who they are. And that's one thing that the festival really accepts, is just people showing up authentically. Like, just show up as you, and as long as who you are isn't an asshole, like, you're gonna be accepted, you know? So it comes down, and even if you are an asshole, like, we're gonna give you a little bit of grace.
Everyone's on the path, right? So we're somewhere in the journey. Of course, we'll give you a lot of grace.
So and I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity for me, and I feel like the best way that you can have gratitude for your experiences is to share them. Right. Like, what's the point of something if you can't give it to other people?
Like, it's my coconut. You can't have it.
Right. Like, what's the point of having money if you're not using it? It's useless in the bank account. You know. So for me, when I have opportunities and spaces, my mind. So we didn't get into it, but after I was working at the radio station, I started, because I went to school for business. So I got into like operations and logistics, and I did that for so many years. After like kind of quitting that and coming into these different spaces, I feel like I can still leverage my experience in business to create these opportunities. The way that I communicate and connect, and like some past experiences that I've had, it makes it easy to open doors for people. So I mean, as a DJ, I feel like I'm creative, but honestly, I feel like I'm nowhere near as creative as the people that walk through the doors that I'm trying to open.
So this leads me to maybe like a final point. I'm hearing about the process, the journey, where you've come from, what's been developing in Bali, what you're grounding into. But I have this feeling like there's something that you're going to distill this into something, and it's going to go somewhere else. And I think it might be interesting to hear what the dream is.
It's funny. I was just talking to some of the artists today, and we were discussing potentially going on some type of tour. Like creating a something different tour. Like Singapore and Thailand and Vietnam, and just like doing what we love to do. You know, as a DJ and MC, singers, dancers, and we just share like our own experience. Like it's our culture that's being amplified, that so many people love and appreciate. But I think when it comes from an authentic place, it's even more value. So we're talking about like what we can do to kind of formulate that, create packages, and start touring. So it's been amazing, because the way that the opportunity came up to even collaborate with Yoga Barn a few months ago, and to have the space to create here at Bali Spirit Fest has been amazing, and extremely grateful. And I try to show my gratitude to the festival, to Megan, by showing up as the best version of myself.
Well, you did that.
Like
you did that. You nailed it.
Thank you.
Well, I want to say I'm super excited about what's coming. What went was amazing.
Thank you.
And we're lucky to have both experienced that. Joshua, thanks, my brother.
It's been an honor.
Really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by.
Appreciate you for having me.